Welcome to the Magnetic Man podcast with your host here, Daniel White, where we teach guys how to be men they can be proud of who attract women that they're proud to be with. And I'm very excited for today's guest that we have on, Nils, who is a mindset coach that focuses on releasing emotional blockages. And I mean, who doesn't have some of those going on in their life that are stopping them from not just the life that they want, but especially the relationships they want, the types of connections that they want as well. That seems to be playing a major part in it. So we've obviously been connected for a while now, and I really appreciate the work that he does, especially because it's not just focused on the surface layer of things. It's going into some of the deeper issues, which I think is really important in today's age. So Nils, great to have you here on the Magnetic Man podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome, man. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to the intro just for people who may have not heard of you before, but just give like a little bit of an update, like you said, like what are you known for? What are you passionate about right now? And then we'll jump into it from there.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of people definitely know me from my dating background, where in some way
Mm-hmm.
you can say for many years in coaching I was focused on what's called inner game, and
Mm-hmm.
how to flow effortlessly and how to remove emotional blockages. Last few years I transitioned into purely the mindset coaching part, which I fell in love with, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm definitely known for being the inner guy for many years.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So even let's just start off there as a jumping point and we'll go from there. Like, how do you see that as different? Like in the dating space, what we talk about is like inner game. It's not really what you're saying to a girl, but kind of your inner work, your limiting beliefs. And do you see it as different to like mindset and emotional blockages? Maybe just talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, so what I see when we talk about, let's say, inner game, we're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
the emotional blockages that we got around women, which of course is a very potent
Mm-hmm.
area. Every young man has a
Sure.
strong sex drive, so he's going to be
Mm-hmm.
affected by women. And, even if someone has a lot of success in, let's say, business, even at a young age, they will always have a dark cloud over themselves if they don't have that area handled, because the area with women is very important. So how it shows up is like as these like frustrations and inner blockages that don't allow the people to attract the women that they want, especially from being themselves, from being authentic and genuine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a really interesting thing that you brought up. Like, in my journey of personal development, like, there's nothing that brings up as much emotions for me as like money and women, And I think that's for a lot of men. And for a long time, I tried to like stay away from that. Like, oh, that's evil. Like making money and like trying to get better with women or have more fulfilling relationships. Like, that's not the spiritual path. But in my own experience, like going on that journey and not avoiding it, but actually like moving through it, hopefully in the most conscious way possible, I've learned so much about myself and I've unlocked these spiritual treasures that were hiding in the place that I was least expecting them. So I think it's important not to get lost in them and become obsessed with the money and women, because I've seen guys who've done that and I've even been there myself, and that's not a really good place to be. But there's almost like there's these spiritual lessons locked up in there, and unless you go in there in that direction and meet them, you don't really discover those things about yourself.
Yes, like it's a rite of passage, I would say, to, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, go
Mm-hmm.
and get good with women. And to be honest, if it wasn't for my experience with women, I would never be where I am today. Never. I would never have gone deeper into
Mm.
spirituality. And I would probably have a miserable life, to be honest, even though parts of my journey
Mm.
was very miserable, which I'll share later. Uh,
Yeah.
Still, I'm forever grateful for what I went through.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's got some not good things about the journey, but the thing that'll give you is some powerful things. So maybe talk to us a little bit about like who was Nils before the dating journey? Was it like kind of nice guy that got friend zoned? Was it the awkward guy who couldn't say anything? Yeah, tell us a little bit about who you were before and how you kind of came across the dating journey and how that started for you.
Yeah, so the relevant information I would say is from teenage years. So like before I was a teenager, up to maybe age like 10, I felt like a cool kid. But then when I was 10, my best friend moved away from the school, like like very suddenly, you know. And I invested 90% of my time with my friend. So now I didn't have any friends really. And I guess I was an outsider. I was a little bit bullied. I didn't feel so bad about it, but I started hanging out with my friends, like younger siblings, because I didn't relate to the people in my class. So that went on for 3 years. And then I became a teenager, and it was an important time because I was always small. I'm a December child. I was always small, and I grew like nearly 30 centimeters in 2 years as I became a teenager. So I became from shortest to tallest. So and I switched school, and I all of a sudden I went from like outsider to one of the coolest. But my self image wasn't really fitting to that, you know. So as a teenager, I remember like this need to be cool, and also having a lot of energy, which a lot of frustration, which I put into to breakdancing at that time. Started doing that at 13. Um, and it's crazy because I remember like being like let's say 15, 16. I had a lot of opportunities with girls because I was kind of cool, but I the only way that something could happen is, let's say, if I was drunk and I didn't feel these emotions, and I just stumbled upon a girl and we kissed, you know, or something. But then I was terrified of meeting this girl again, terrified. And I had like all my friends. We were a breakdance crew, so we were pretty cool. All my friends had so many girls. Like it was effortless for everyone around me. And for me, I was like, my self image is like I need to stay cool, but that meant that I never like tried to get any girl because it was so awkward. Like I was so shy. I was suppressing myself big time. And one instance, I it's so relevant. Like when I was 15, I fall in love with this other girl who used to be in a parallel school. So it's someone like you check the photo calendars every year, and you see this girl, you know, as you grow up, and you fall in love like this. And then somehow this is the early version of like a Swedish version of kind of Instagram, and we connect on this, you know, and fucking Hotmail and all that shit. And we start talking, and we talk intensely for a month. Like it's we have a phone, everything, and then finally we're gonna meet. And I remember like I'm gonna meet this woman. I'm
Yo,
15.
by this time, you must have been fully head over heels in love. You must have been so excited at this point.
Yeah, so it's so crazy. Like I had that pain for 10 years after. So basically, like I'm in this kind of neighborhood, which is where I used to grow up, and my best friend lives there, and I'm with him. And she moved there. So we're texting, and finally we're like, "Oh, we're both here. Like, let's meet." We're like, "Yeah, yeah, let's meet." And right, I remember when I'm texting that, I'm like, "Oh fuck!" Like now my illusion like has to be burst, but I don't think like that. I'm just like, "Okay, I need to meet," but on the inside I'm terrified, and I don't know how to deal with it, so I try to just suppress it. So I'm like, "Okay, I'm bringing my friend," and she's like, "Yeah, that's fine. I'm bringing two friends." And in the back of my like later I realized it was the stupidest thing. Anyways, so we go like we walk there 20 minutes, go to the back of a school, and we're gonna meet. So we say hi, and she sits on a bench with the two friends on two sides, and I just sit on a rock a few meters away. And I sit there silently for 20 minutes while she babbles nonstop with her friends for 20 minutes. And my friend is like, just say something, just say something. I couldn't get a single word out of my mouth. So 1 month, head over heels, falling in love with this girl. I sat there and I just terrified, couldn't say a single word. So much pressure. And at that time, I thought she was very confident because she's talking with a friend, you know. And 10 years later, I realized she was also nervous. She just dealt with it like an extrovert. I dealt with it like an introvert. But at that time, I had this belief that women, I was not good enough for women at all. So Then she leaves, we say bye, it's over. And right when she leaves, I remember telling my friends, like, yeah, maybe it's still not over, because now the pressure was gone. And I felt good. And then
Mm,
I was like kind of chasing this girl for one more year, and it was just horrible. And every
mm,
single girl after that, until I found the dating community, was the same story. Like, I just kind of fall in love with a girl on a distance, and the closer we get, the more problems I'm having. And yeah, man, like I was quite desperate. I was quite desperate,
mm,
and I felt like this is just gonna solve
mm.
itself when I get older, hopefully. But I had my doubts.
Yeah, yeah, that's a crazy story, man. It's so common how I think so many men will have that same experience, just like in a different form. I also remember, like, when I was growing up as a teenager, we'd also have like these apps. It wasn't like Tinder, they didn't have that back then, but it was kind of like a messenger app, and you could just like meet random people. And I remember, like, in the chat, I would be like, yeah, let's meet up, and like, I'm gonna bang you, and like, it's gonna be so raunchy. And then, like, if the girl was ever like, yeah, like, let's meet up, I'd always be like, the whole persona would change. It would almost be like, it's like a front, it's like a fake, like, it's like your alter ego, like, yeah, I'm so cool and we're gonna do this, and like, oh, but then it's like when reality actually comes, like, you completely choke, you completely don't know what you're doing because it's a complete facade that you've built up. And I see this a lot with the guys doing like Tinder and Hinge these days. They're like learning, like, oh, you got to have a cool profile and you got to be dominant and you got to tell her you're going to do this. But like, you take some like shy guy who, and it's like the incongruence between like what you're projecting yourself to be versus who you actually are is so big that even if the girl's like, cool, let's meet up, like when she meets up, she's like, what the hell is this? Like, this isn't who I
Yeah,
thought you were. And it's actually not good for men, I believe. But like, I think we all go through that phase to some extent, which you obviously had here.
yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Like, I'll even, like, I remember the day I found out about this, like the game, like the seduction community,
Mm,
because it was
mm,
like so vivid. I was in a parking lot. I was sitting. I was with my parents. I was 19 at the time, so I'm 29 at this moment. I was 19, and
mm,
I'm sitting in the car, and my parents asked, like, "You want to come in and join? We're going to my brother's wife's birthday." I'm like, nah, And at that time, I've been watching some sales videos because I wanted potentially to get into sales. So recommended video, there's some like RSD video I see, and I'm like, fuck, I don't want to watch some stuff about women, but I just click it, like secret of charisma, congruence, and stuff like that. And then I just start to listen, and then the title, like, this guy, like, he's just so funny. I'm like, what? This like stand up, like, so funny. And then, like, somewhere in the 17 mark, he just says something like, if you're the kind of guy who wants to better himself and be good with women, like, you should want to, meet an amazing girl and like have a crazy experience and have so much fun, and then like in the morning you make breakfast for her, like with the food you found in her fridge, like some shit like this. And I just see a whole image in my mind, and I'm sold. I'm like shocked, I'm like, wow, like, I have permission to talk to a stranger girl, and then I know that my life will change, even though I was terrified still. And I'm like, fuck, this is gonna be hard, I was like, it's possible. It's possible. And that was
mm.
enough to open the floodgates.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting how like hope is that key that like unlocks the door, because like before it's almost like, well, why would I even try? There's no hope. And even for me, I was like a theory junkie for years in my early 20s. Like, I would like read all this stuff and I'd be like, wow, like this is so crazy. But it wasn't actually until I did my first live program in like my mid 20s where like I knew about it and I watched the videos and I saw some infields, but it's like it almost seemed like still out of my reality. Like, this is not really real. And then I went on my first live program and I saw these guys that like weren't like cool guys that or the men that I saw get girls, they were like kind of like nerdy dudes and things like that. But I would see them go in, and these guys were legit like going and talking and like making out with girls, and like it totally fried my brain. And like after that, like my life was never the same, because it's like I knew it was possible. Like before I was like, yeah, it happens for those other people. But as soon as I saw the vision, like you said, I had hope. I'm like, wow, I can really change my situation if I put an effort here. And like for me, I was just gone after that. I'm like, I don't need any motivation, anything. Like that's all I needed. And that kind of kicked off my journey. So it was interesting, similar to you. It's that vision, it's that hope, like, wow, my life can be different. And it's a truth. I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in lots of people's lives. So yeah, man, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting. What happened after is kind of so I started going out by myself because man,
Where's
like
this? Back in Sweden. Back in
back in
Sweden.
back in Sweden, I would say like yeah. So this is like started in the summer of 2013. So it was over 10 years ago. Um, I didn't have anyone like I had like my friends were kind of naturals and stuff, but in the beginning I didn't want to involve them.
Mm,
So I remember like, oh, I don't have the strength to like ask a girl be direct, but I can ask 5 girls a day for the time, or some shit like this. So that
mm.
evolved, and I started doing that for a few months. Like, started making it more strange and weird to challenge myself, ask like weird questions and shit. But I didn't get anywhere because I didn't step into that. And then I went to visit my aunt with my parents in Costa Rica for like a month. And then I stopped going out. I'd been going out for like 6 months, no results, and just by myself. Then I take a break, and then I come back to Sweden, and that was the first time, like on New Year's Eve when I come back. Was all of a sudden it was first time I thought like I was talking with a girl, and I'm like, yeah, maybe we can go to my place. Like first time I'm like, oh, so then that 2014 became a year when, let's say, I got results. I got a natural friend to come and game with me. Like I would spam approach everyone, 40 girls in a night, and he would hook everyone. And basically, he would get the hot
Yeah,
one, and I would get the so what friend. But I would learn because I just
yeah.
observe him. He don't tell me so much. I just look at him, what he's doing,
Mm,
and I was learning, learning,
mm.
learning. Um, and then 2015 is kind of when things like took off and became extreme. When I was going out like 6 nights a week, and started getting like more results than I expected I would get. Like,
Mm. And who are you kind of learning from at this point? Is it just like online videos? Do you have any kind of mentorship, or are you just kind of making this stuff up like as you go along, setting yourself own challenges? Like who's kind of guiding you while you're taking this massive action, or you just kind of guiding yourself?
it's like a combination. I would say about 50% was like myself, my own insights, and how to move it forward.
Mm,
But RSD at this time was a
mm,
huge influence for me, especially
mm,
Julian and Tyler. Tyler for like life in a
mm,
game, like success principles, and just Julian for like I probably didn't manage to do most stuff he did, but I was motivated by just listening, consuming. I did a Todd boot
mm,
camp back in 2015 as well, where
mm,
I pulled together with Todd, and he was very impressed and all that thing. He actually invited me to work for RSD in 2015 to go to the immersion program. That's when I was just in game for 1.5 years. So I actually went to America, but I fucked up in the border control, and I got deported back to Sweden.
Oh shit! What happened there? You didn't have the right visa, or you had some weed in your bag? Like, tell me about that story.
Yeah, so it's ridiculous. Like my friend, he went 1 year before, and he told me like they put him into secondary and abused him, kind of. And I was like, yeah, man, it's fine. My friend is dark, I'm white. It's gonna be fine. And then I go there,
Mm,
and that's actually probably the first moment I realized that the game actually didn't really change me in the core, because these border guards
mm,
managed to bring out the vulnerable small little child kind of in me, in the way they were asking questions. And I was
mm,
naive. I was 21. I was naive, and I thought it's better to just tell the truth than to lie. Now I realize, like, if you're having any
Mm,
business shit, like, you're quiet in the border control. You don't go say
mm,
that. So they asked me, what am I gonna do? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this and this. And then they took me to secondary. They couldn't get connected to RSD because the thing was undercover, kind of. And I didn't know any of these things. So I sat there for like 10 hours and yeah, just kind of crushed my plan at that time because I was so invested. I'm like, love RSD, you know, I wanted to work for them. That was the career I was seeing, and I'm like, yeah, now I got the opportunity. Let's jump. So it just got overturned, um, which
mm.
took my life in a different direction. Actually, like instead of America, I went to Norway instead.
Mm. Yeah, that's crazy. So obviously you get rejected at the border because you're obviously going there like probably on some kind of holiday visa, but then you tell them you're kind of going there for like a work or like an internship, I'm guessing. Is that right? Was that for their
Yeah,
Vegas immersion program?
yeah, correct. That was for the Vegas immersion program.
Yeah. Yeah, because the guy I learned from, like my main mentor, Gabriel, he actually went to that Vegas immersion and he also got invited there and he became like one of the coaches there for a couple months. So it seemed like a good spot for coaches coming together. So you get deported from the border at America, which is never fun. But you say you make it back to Norway, and now what's kind of your mindset? You had all this momentum, you were starting to get results, you started to get invited. I'm curious. Like, I'm also a big fan of like Tyler and Julian, most of the guys, but I'd say that they stuck out to me the most. Why'd you end up doing a boot camp with Todd? Because he's a little bit different, like more analytical, more like structured, more technical, where Tyler and Julian are a little bit more principle, abstract orientated. Like, did you feel a call to him, or he was just the one doing a boot camp in your area? And yeah, how did you find his teaching style for you personally?
Yeah, I would say like it was we wanted to like it was me and my friend in the beginning. My friend later backed out, but we wanted to do a boot camp in our area. And at that time, like you just booked a boot camp, you couldn't actually book with the person. You booked, and then you see who you got. You know. So I remember first one we got Max, and he was new. This was 2014. You know. So I actually managed to get another friend to do that one, so I didn't have to do it. And then in 2015, I was assigned Todd, and in my mind, I wanted Julian, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, you know, like I don't want to push another and find another guy to do this boot camp. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I just thought, okay, second best choice, fine. Um, yeah, his teaching style was interesting because at least at that time, he gave me a lot of like props because we were three guys on the boot camp. He spent 90% of the time with me, and like he was like giving me so much compliments, and I felt almost like I didn't know how good I was at that time. And then he gave me some more advice, like about like the one big advice he said is like I was leaning in too much, let's say. He was technical and he talked about all these technical things, and to be honest, this is something for the record, like I've never been technical so much because I
Mm,
couldn't really be smooth if I had to think so much.
mm,
So even in the beginning, like I have used techniques, but it's been like for like a joke or like to pump my state or like you know like running around doing like a hand of God or like choke opener or like stuff like this, like amusement kind of, and maybe some
mm,
techniques somehow. But like if when I started to think about let's say technical game that we talk about, I could not do that because it gets so much in my head, it would fry my brain power. For me, it was more
mm,
about flow, and the style of game I had in the early years was finding out how to get in state and basically pump that state and stay in state, which meant that I could get a lot of girls from nightclubs and even from day game. But dates would be like starting from scratch. I'd have to build my state on a date. And if I met her again, I had to do the same shit. So, like, meeting girls and dating girls was a problem. And at that time, I'm like, fuck this. I just want to go get another girl, another girl, another girl.
mm. Yeah, that can be the dangerous thing if you just rely on state for dating because then it's like, well, if you're not in states, if you go like on a date with a girl, it's not the same as being in a club or in the day. Like for me, it was similar to you. It's interesting that you said you used to go out with this natural. Well, just before I got into like boot camp official game, I'd known about it, but I also used to go out with one of my natural friends. And this guy was like amazing, like one of the best I've ever seen. Like even after meeting all these dating coaches, I'm like, this guy would like wipe the floor with most of them. But I just used to watch him because he could never tell me what he was doing. And if he did, it was just like wrong. But just like watching him and his attitude and his mindsets and stuff like that, like learning through osmosis, I found was very helpful. And then it helped me have a better attitude, mindset, vibe in a way. Then when I did learn some technical game and like structure, it like came together really well because I didn't get so lost in my head. I was like, okay, cool. I'm still like in my body, good vibe. But it was nice for me to know, like, I'd be like with the girl and be like, cool, how do I take her home? Like, what's a cool little thing I can say here? Of like, what happens when her friend comes in? Like, there were those little moments where like some kind of structure helped me. And it's not that you like say it like a parrot, but I'm like, these situations happen all the time and I don't know how to I should act in them, and then the structures or stuff like that would help me in that situation. But let's go back to you and your kind of journey from there. So you get back from America, you're in Norway. Where are you with the dating stuff now? Is it like cool, you want to keep getting better? Are you disillusioned? Obviously no social prime was part of your journey. How far away was that down the road compared to where you are now? Yeah, fill us in from there.
Yeah, yeah. So like when I came to Norway was, let's say, about a year before I met Chris for the first time, and about a year before we went into social prime. So I came to Norway, and I was still on the hunt. Like like I was actually on a hunt to like achieve, let's say, 100 days. That was a goal I had. So I was using that as motivation. So I kept going. I remember
Yeah.
I go to Norway. And funny enough, in Norway, in the first like months, I could only like be with Swedish girls. Like until I broke the code, then I was with a Norwegian girl. It was a funny moment. But no, I just like me and my friend. We went. Me and my friend Yolmas, who Yolmas was also part of Social Prime. I met him 1 year after I was in the game, and he was like kind of my first guy I took on under the wing until we became brothers. Yeah, he was so what happened is when I met him was about like when me and my mentor, my first mentor, who was a very good friend, he was my breakdance partner as well, natural guy. We sort
Nice.
of parted ways a little bit because I knew I wanted to go much more, and he was backing down kind of. I was like, yeah, I want to do what RSD does, which is 7 days a week. And then I met this guy, and he was fresh. I was 1 year in. I had a lot of momentum, and I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And he was down to go out like 6 nights a week, so we just started to go out. So this was Yolmas basically, who was in Social Prime. He was called Nicola at one point. Basically, he came to me. He came with me to Norway, and then we just we started doing the same thing. Like one interesting thing is like we always wanted to be under the radar. So we were like known in the community, in the RSD inner circle in Stockholm and Oslo. And people knew we were very good and we were going out all the time and they saw us pulling all the time. But we were a bit like kind of under the radar. We like to be the underground kind of good guys in that place.
Yeah.
So kept going out there. At some point, I was starting to get disillusioned because I started to get into spirituality a little bit, and that's around the time that I met Chris, which is a funny story. So this is way back, like in 2016. Yolmas, he was the moderator for Oslo, and he was in this RSD Inner Circle Oslo and connected to the one in Sweden as well. And the moderator starts talk about Chris and another guy called Adrian, because they are like almost kind of promoting in the inner circle, and they're doing kind of their own thing, and they're becoming like famous in the community. So Yolmas, he gets jealous and he tells them to ban them. So they
Yeah.
ban them. And then he feels bad. He feels bad, so he goes there to Gothenburg, which is the next big the second biggest city on the west coast, close to Oslo. And he apologizes, like he wants to apologize, and then they become friends. And then he tells me like, yeah, man, like I found some amazing guys, because we were always the best, always where we were, because we went out the most. We never saw any guys who were on our level at that time. And then finally we meet two people who are at our level or better, or a little bit whatever. So we go there and then we just bond. Like we have such a crazy connection. The four of us, we go 2 times, and then we are, friends pretty much. And from there, kind of the seeds were like born. And then it was in January in 2017. I remember Chris, he had a massive, massive epiphany, a huge epiphany. Like he helped someone and he had a massive epiphany and he couldn't even sleep, and his brain was like almost frying. And it was about spirituality, and he called me, and I was the only one who understood what he was talking about. And we connected, and at the end of that call, he had been doing Social Prime. He split from his friend that had been doing Social Prime for a few months as a brand. And at the end of the call, it's like, yeah, man, you're the only one who understands this. Like, I want to do Social Prime, I want to make it bigger. I want to share it with you. And then I'm like, kind of overwhelmed, but I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Because at that time I had a different business venture. I was gonna become a property investor in England. Like it was such a different thing, because I thought I was moving on from dating, but then I get sucked back in. And yeah, and then even after that, I get a sales job, which is amazing sales job. But after a few months, I'm pushed. Like either I take the decision and we do the boot camps and we do all of this, or I just stay in my sales job. And I was making nearly 10K a month, euros in my sales job. So I was like,
Nice.
nah, fuck it. I drop it. Like I dropped it, and I went for the boot camps, which was new. Like none of us had done boot camps. And all of a sudden we're going to do immersions every 2 weeks, like, or every 3 weeks, in Budapest, and which we never been. But Chris brand was getting bigger, and it carried us in the beginning, and then we started building our own brands through Social Prime. So that's the story how I got into Social Prime.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's a really interesting story, and how all those events unfolded. I'm curious from your side, like obviously you mentioned Chris had like this vision or this epiphany, and that obviously drew you in. You mentioned spirituality, but what was that initial vision? What was it that drew you in? Was it like, oh, dating plus spirituality? Is it we're gonna help guys? Like, what were those initial things that were like, wow, this is something special, this is something different? Because obviously it sounded like it gripped you pretty big, and I know Social Prime got pretty well known at a stage. So what was it that was drawing everyone in? Because it was kind of different from what everyone else was doing, if I understand correctly.
Yes. Like funny enough, like I spoke with Chris yesterday, and I was laughing. He was a bit pissed. He's like, so many guys are talking about what we talked about 6 years ago, now, like, which is this kind of inner game stuff that we were doing. But yeah, basically, yeah, the epiphany he had to do with emotions and emotional blockages. We didn't call it that at the time. And it had to do with unlocking your brain, because he had like released something, and he understood how he did it, and it kind of unlocked his brain. Like the talks we had was about like how to, let's say, open and hijack your intelligence and open it up in a big way. So it wasn't even an epiphany about dating. It was an epiphany about like how to unlock yourself, like the Limitless movie. And we both realized this. And we thought, we're there. It was just the beginning, but we thought we were already there. And then that formed into how to create a dating based like process on this, like how to allow these blockages to come up and for you to deal with them, so that you can unlock your brain, so that you using girls as a limitless pill, basically. um, so the goal was like actually quite different. Like the goal was not even like necessarily to do something big with women. It was really like to become like the limitless guy. Even from the beginning, that was the goal. then I remember when we started coaching, all of our experience was put in the mix. Like the years of experience we had was put in the mix into the coaching. And yeah, we were talking about, let's say, some technical things, maybe 20% in the boot camps, but mainly it was how to deal with these emotional blockages. We also created a process called time travel, which was a process of like how to take people back into the past, how to take people and to release the kind of core traumas that they have and the inner blockages that would form at a very young age, using the problems with women they have today, just tracking it all the way back into the core and releasing the core. And I even remember the first client in the first boot camp, we were sitting there, all of us, and this guy is just like releasing core trauma in front of our eyes and crying, and we look at each other and we're like, we made it. Like we're like, we did something we didn't even know was possible.
You unlock the code. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. And we saw like dramatic changes in people through this. It was like, for me, social prime, like the best time that I will always remember is that first 6 months when everything is fresh, and just it's like every single thing that happened just became like more and more like significant. There was so many interesting things that were happening, like dealing with people's issues, having guys like break down and cry and then be a completely new person the next day. And like yeah, it was really a crazy time, like in 2017, in the from like September to November. Really, really
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah, it does sound like you guys stumbled onto something, and you're obviously helping men in a big way kind of unlock this part of themselves. I think when I went to speak at the Sopot Summit, I think in 2019, and that's when I started hearing more about you guys. And obviously there was some like rumors going around by some characters that maybe didn't have the best intentions at heart, but they would almost, I didn't really know you guys and like what you were all about. But like people would say like, oh, like they have these dodgy processes, they're just giving people like drugs and LSD and stuff like that. So maybe you can kind of clear the record a little bit. And I have nothing against plant medicine and using those types of modalities, because they can unlock certain things that people suppress. But maybe just put the
Mm.
record straight here. Or how was it? What was this process? Would you guys kind of use some LSD and stuff like that? And did you see a result in the clients with that? Yeah, feel free as much as you want to share on that.
Of course, of course. Like I'm about authenticity. So like basically the reason that some of these rumors happened is because we had some people that we thought were friends. They end up like, in my opinion, kind of backstabbing us. One reason could be like, uh, also to for the record, like sometimes Chris could be aggressive and people could be very triggered by that, And so he started creating some enemies where I was still feeling like I was friends until I saw what they were saying about us. Whereas this person I saw as my friend, so obviously like I'm not friends with that person anymore. And what social prime was, the issue is that we were young guys. Like I was 23 when we started, and I was the oldest. So everyone was like
Sure.
20, 20 to 23. We didn't know how to run a business, and we didn't know how to have a good lifestyle. We were doing immersions, and then we go and pick up girls until 7 in the morning every day afterwards. And we have all these crazy experiences,
Mm.
but we don't sleep. We don't take care of our health. I wasn't working out. And I lived like that for 2.5 years. So that took a toll on the process and all the stress that comes with business and people that come in and crazy people and so on. Um, that's, in my opinion, one thing which destroyed like what we wanted to build and our ability to even have a vision. Because after that, I just wanted to get the fuck away. I didn't want to like stay. I needed space. I actually went for 6 months after to Africa, to Tunisia, to just get space from everyone and everything. So yeah, like, but also I think at some point I realized I didn't know if I wanted to dating for forever. I felt I was more passionate about the inner work. Now, about the rumors with the LSD and stuff, I would say it is true, but only for very close friends. So it was two or three people, and one of them broke our trust actually and told people about it. So that was something that was never done to, let's say, a client. It was something which was done like to someone who was very close to us, who turned on us because that was experiments because we were seeing ourselves a little bit like pioneers. Now, why that came out and how it became a big thing and like people, of course, twisting it, I think it was because the animosity and the kind of bad blood. Like for me personally, I didn't have any bad blood to these people until I saw what they did behind my back. And then I'm like, okay, no, 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 I'm not friends with these people anymore.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool. So it wasn't like the impression that I got is like part of the social prime boot camp or immersion is like everyone goes, and I think there was like a name for it. I don't know if it was called like the time machine or like something like that. But you saying it's
Yeah.
not like every client that came to work with you would do an LSD trip. Like you only did it with like a small handful of people that weren't necessarily only just clients, they were actually friends. And when you say friends, was it guys you used to go out with? Were they kind of business partners? Were they people you met along the journey? Like how were these people your friends?
Yeah, they were like very close people. Like some might have been peers. Like we did one
Mm-hmm.
session for a guy who was not a client. Maybe he was also one who
Mm,
was spreading that shit. It's someone
mm,
who we try to help out. And we thought, okay, this person is very fucked. Let's help him. And then he kind of
mm,
turned of us. I think he has some psychological stuff. Like
mm,
another guy
mm.
was a guy who was admiring Chris a lot and was good friends with us. He was not even supposed to take the boot camp. He did it out of like kind of love for
And
Chris, and that yeah,
so so just to
yeah.
confirm, like it was more, it wasn't this wasn't a thing that would happen with every client who came on a boot camp with you. It only happened with like a few select handful of people, and it wasn't necessarily part of the process with everyone who took a program with Social Prime. Is that correct? Am I understanding it correctly, or how did it unfold?
It's it's correct. Like there's no point where this was a part of the process.
Mm,
This was literally experience because we did the experiences on ourselves and found that maybe it's better. We did it on
mm,
ourselves and saw big shifts, and we thought, let's try this with a set few of people just to see what happens. Um,
mm,
but it was not part of like what we were doing with clients like at all. It
mm.
was literally friends, and like one or two of them actually, yeah, literally I think it was three or four people, and one or two of them actually turned. Like one I know, and one maybe he did it behind the back.
Mm. Okay, cool. That makes a lot more sense. And I guess when the rumors start spreading, like by the time I hear about it, it's kind of like, oh, this is their thing that they do with like every client, but it's pretty crazy. Just out of curiosity, like obviously you said you kind of experimented with it first before kind of sharing it around. What impacts did it have for you? Were you able to see your traumas differently? Did you use like LSD in combination with another technique that you were doing that you found enhanced it? Like what were the benefits for you that you experienced when you did it?
Yeah, so interesting. Like one reason we tried it is because we were reading some of the research that was done from MAPS University in America, where they took people that were on PTSD that were like very bad, like nearly suicidal, and they did like three treatments. Like I think they did with mushrooms and LSD and MDMA. But the one with MDMA, I remember they did like it was three treatments in the schedule to release core trauma from what they went through as veterans. And it was crazy. The success rate was like 70%, which is unheard of in any therapy. It was the highest like recorded, over 70%. And out of them, almost all of them did not have to go to the third session because they were finished already. And these are people that could take 30 years in therapy. So we thought that's so interesting. Like we were reading about those things. We thought, okay, maybe what if we try that with core traumas with women? Maybe we can create like, you know, let's say like a completely like high self-esteem man who can, you know, become amazing with women in like a day by doing this process. That's what was the vision. Of course,
Mm.
uh, this was all new. If it would have worked very well, and maybe it would have, like we didn't have enough time to experiment with that. We would have, of course, like found ways to patent it and find ways to, you know, make it like as legal as you can, and these things. All these things were in the mind, you know, because we were still in the testing phase. Um, the thoughts were, of course, like when we have a bigger company, we're gonna make this whole thing if it works very well. And I would say it worked quite well on the guys we did, and on us it worked even better. Like on us, we saw certain core traumas in a different way that you didn't see it before. You were able to use the process we had, which was called the time travel, to guide like very, very deep into the body and deep into the past, like seeing memories from the womb and stuff like that.
Sure. Okay, cool. So that makes sense. So you've got this, what is it called? Time travel.
Time travel, yeah, time travel.
Time travel, yeah. So you've got this process that you do with clients called time travel. Then you're hearing about these studies with LSD, and now like MDMA therapy is like very popular. So you say, hey, let's experiment on ourselves. Let's try to time travel with the LSD and see if that unlocks more things, which it did for you personally. And then you went and tried that with a few guys who maybe had some big blockages, and that was kind of like the whole process. Is that right?
Yes. And one
Yeah.
reason for that also is like, let's say 30% of the guys we had, they had done like, let's say ayahuasca retreats and all these things. It
Mm.
was no big deal in our mind, you know,
Mm.
like everyone was open to psychedelics. So we were like, yeah, you know, let's do it.
Mm.
And then the way it was presented, we were like, what is these people? They were our friends a few months ago, and now it's something else, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe we'll chat about that in a second, but also just curious, what were some of those experiences for you? Obviously, you said you saw your own traumas in a different way when taking LSD and doing this process. What were some of the things that you saw if you're open to sharing?
Yeah, so the most significant, let's say, like trauma release experience I ever had, it was in 2018 when I was on a afterglow, let's say, of a LSD experience. I had like been tripping for fun, and then me and my friend, we was in Budapest, and I just get the stomach pain from drinking coffee, like in the morning. We didn't sleep, and then I have to go lie down, and then my friend, he's guiding me uh, intuitively through kind of a time travel process where that pain in the stomach goes into a core trauma um, of when it's like a core trauma when I broke my leg when I was 1 years old, and I thought I was gonna die, and I didn't feel safe, and it was in the kindergarten, and my mom was not there, and I felt like she betrayed me. So I went into that core trauma, and like I released so much emotion, and I was crying, and then I was calling my mom, and like just hearing that she loved me unconditionally, and she did, and she told me that was so impactful. And then I went through 2 hours more, went into another core trauma when I was like maybe 2 years old, and my dad sort of left me in a ski box after him with an open view. And then when he checked back 20 minutes later, I was blue. I was so cold, I was blue. So then that was a core trauma with him when I almost died, and um, and that was even more impactful actually because I had more suppressed stuff with my father. And just after that, like that was a moment where I became, let's say, much more spiritual because all of a sudden I started to experience a flow of energy between things. I was like unlocked in really a spiritual way. Like there's no other way to describe it. I started to see patterns around me, and this was not just because I was on LSD. For 3 months, I was on a boost. I was on a glow, on a high. For 3 months, it stayed because It was not a just a, let's say, a psychedelic experience and then feeling crazy for a few days. No, 3 months. I was the happiest I ever was in my life, and I was open, and all of these new things came into my perception around spirituality and energy and awareness, and yeah, still to this day, it's one of the most impactful experiences that I had.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that sounds pretty deep, you know? So it's like you do these releases, you go on these processes, but it's not that it just helps you there and then in the moment. It's probably changed the trajectory of your life to a large extent. And yeah, it's so interesting how you said like you had these memories of these traumas when you were 1 years old, 2 years old with your mom or your dad. Even for me, like when I'm doing a lot of the work these days and going back into past memories, it'll be interesting, like these little memories that pop up that like in the moment they didn't even seem that bad, but somehow they kind of like locked in your mind or locked in your body. Where like I remember once for me, I think I was like 5 years old, and my dad like drinks a lot, which obviously we have some issues with that. But like he was just out with his friends and they were like all having like a barbecue like in the back of the garden, and they had like hair clippers and they were like shaving each other's hair and like giving each other haircuts. And I remember I was like 5 years old then, and someone was like, "Oh, let's give Daniel a haircut," and all these types of things. And I was kind of like, "No, no, no! Like I don't want this." But because they were kind of like drinking, I didn't really feel safe around them. And I remember like I sat down and they ended up like shaving my head. Everyone's kind of like laughing and having a good time, except for me, you know, like inside of me, I'm like,
Mm.
what the fuck? Like, I thought you were supposed to be here to kind of look after me, but like, I'm having this experience, and like even 20 years later, or it's almost like 25 years, like that's something that still stays with me. And I've been doing like a lot of work on kind of getting into that. And there's lots of memories I have like that. So I think that's really cool how you were able to go back into some of those memories, because I see so many people today. It's like they're doing all this work on the surface level of their lives now, but I think they underestimate how much of those early childhood experiences and the things that happened, how much they impact your life now, whether it's with women, whether it's with money, just your overall happiness and the way you view the world. And I know that's kind of the direction you've taken now with your business. I think obviously you focus a lot on that in terms of the work that you do.
Yes, yes, I focus only on that actually, and it came about like in in 2020. I felt I was kind of finished, like beginning of 2020, end of 2019. I felt I was kind of finished with this life of living like on top of each other for 3 years and doing dating programs and so on. So it was a conscious decision to move away, and I didn't have any other idea what to do. So then I went to Tunisia to a friend of mine, and then we happened to have the pandemic and everything. So I was there for 6 months in a small village. Like I only lived in big cities, and then I go to a small village where I don't speak the language as well. Um,
What was that experience like, just to jump in there living in Tunisia for 6 months, like in a completely different continent, different culture? What was that like?
I was pretty crazy. Like
Not much
it,
game there, I'm guessing.
no, no. Like I even made the decision to be like consciously celibate because I
Hmm.
needed a break from women as well. At that time, I was confused because women had been the central focus of my life from mid 2013 to like the end of 2019. So that's like over 5 years. Women had been my central focus. Like maybe it's almost 6 years, or more than 6 years. I felt I needed space from this. I felt I needed to go away because it's like I almost approach women in a hyper masculine way of trying to like just achieve something with them, women. Even the idea of like becoming successful with women, it's
Mm.
like they become a like a drug.
Mm.
So I felt this was damaging me a lot as a person because I was dating women when I was in Poland. I was dating women. I didn't like it. Like I felt forced to see women just to keep them, let's say, in my circle. I wanted to go out and like talk to other new girls. Like I was hooked on this thing. It was an addiction. So I wanted to break out. I'm like, fuck it. I don't care who. because at the time I had a reputation as well, so that was holding me back. Like, what if I stop meeting women? So many people, they look up to me as being some womanizer or whatever. In 2020, I'm like, no, I don't care. Like, I'm just gonna stop this now because I don't like it, and become a celibate for as long as I feel like, which happened to be actually uh, over 2 years, which was longer than I expected. But at that time, I managed to develop myself deeper internally and really go deep into spirituality. And yeah, so 2020 was the start of that. I went to Tunisia, no women, no distraction. Then the pandemic hit, so we can't go outside because in Tunisia they were strict with the military. I stay inside with my friend in the apartment for 2 months. I don't go out. I start to experiment with silent days and also learning something called classical yoga, which helped me a lot. And this idea of like, I knew the core of what we were doing in the beginning in Social Prime was not even about women. It was about, unlocking your brain, unlocking your self esteem. So that came back to me at that time, like that original vision, and I thought, why don't I just go and do that? The main goal, the main purpose, without the dating stuff. And I had a community around me of people that were following me from those years. So I coached. I did about 100 free calls. Like, I coached almost 100 people just on free calls to experiment what's next. And from there, I built a client base, and then I started coaching, like mindset coaching and life coaching, like just the spiritual part, the inner work part. Um, and the whole idea came from me doing silent days. Like, I did 7 days in silence in a row when I was there in Tunisia, and after that, sitting and watching the wall for 3 hours, like you were inspired to work, you're inspired to do something, and then that's what I started to do.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's really cool. I want to speak about a topic you touched on, but especially on the silent days, like I've done many like silent retreats, like 5 days. I actually normally do them over New Year's. Like before I used to like go out and get drunk over New Year's, but spending 5 days in silence is a great way to reflect on the year that's just happened and also set intentions for the year ahead. And last month I was actually in Thailand and I did a 10-day dark room retreat, which is also in silence. They have like a teacher who speaks there, but it's basically like completely locking off all your senses for 10 days. It was the first time I did that, which was a super wild experience. But I want to speak a little bit about something you brought up there, where like the rush for women can even become an addiction, because that's something that I felt in a big way, and there's not a lot of people who can relate to that, because like most guys, no offense, like they're really bad at this stuff and they would like give their left ball to like have the opportunity to like be with women and just have so many women. And like you hear maybe a conversation like this and you're like, listen to these guys complaining about like how unsatisfactory it is to keep getting another girl and all these girls that they have. But it's a real thing. And even for me with my partner now, like I'm in an exclusive relationship, and man, it was like one of the hardest things I ever did. I still probably need to figure this out better, but like one of the ways I look at it, it's almost like you start off and you're kind of like not good with girls, and then you almost build what you would call like a personality, or I almost look at it as like an entity, and that entity loves going out there and like meeting women. And you could say validation or something. I'd say that's kind of a broad term, but it's almost like this little sub personality that you create. And the thing is, like most guys, like the thing I almost recommend to guys, like, hey, you suck with girls, like go out there, improve those social skills. But number one, know why you're doing it. Like, I want to get a cool partner, or I just want to feel that confidence in myself. So you know when to stop. Because like for guys like with me, I've even seen it with a couple students of mine. It's pretty brutal where they've gotten so good and then they just like stuck in this loop. Like you've created this little entity that to me almost turns into a little monster. And then we're like, hey, I just want to chill out and I just want to be with one girl, or I just want to relax. that little entity is like, screw you, man. Like, I'm not just gonna let you relax now. And I know for me, like, even when I was with my partner, like, I couldn't even go to we would never go out to a bar or club or like that, because in that environment, like, this fucking skill set or whatever you want to call it just take over. Like, I couldn't stop looking at other girls and be like, cool, I can go talk to that girl, because it's like, I knew I could do it, but it was like, it wasn't helping my life. It was hurting my life a lot in terms of where I want to go and start a family and stuff like that. Like, going out to a cafe or a restaurant was like living hell. I'd be like sitting there and like my mind would just be like fucking out. Um, and I'm still, I think I'm just getting to the phase now where it's like, hey, I can go out with my girl and we can have a good time, and I'm not worried about like looking at other women. But like, this is a big part that not a lot of people talk about. And I almost like the way you described it, where you had this break in Tunisia and you did this stuff because you almost need some space from it for a while. Otherwise, you're like so caught up in the momentum. I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, but I heard like Jordan Peterson talk about this, where he was almost like, you can just be like kind of a normal guy, but when you go down this route, and he wasn't necessarily talking about pickup, but he was talking about like guys who are just really good with women. It's almost like you can get into this habit, like meet new girl, have fun with new girl, have awesome sex, whatever, and then it's like, cool, next girl, and it's like new girl, meet new girl, have fun, awesome, and you get really good at that, which can have positive effects. But then when you're like, okay, cool, like I don't want to do this anymore, it's like not fulfilling to me, or I want to settle down, I want to meet with one girl, that habit you've created of just like short term relationship, like cool, we just have sex and then move on to the next one, like that is not an easy habit to break. And I don't hear anyone speaking about this, because obviously not a lot of guys even get to that level. So yeah, I really like
Yeah.
your story of how you had that time to separate, and then also how spirituality came in and played a big role in terms of what was next for you.
Yeah, like it's so good that you said all of these things, because this, like you said, it's not talked about so much. Um, the initial mistake I did is when I started a game. I mean, the thing that made me so successful and, let's say, vicious in the beginning is that I had a goal. Like, I wanted to sleep with 100 women. And once I
Mm.
did that, I realized, okay, like I'm happy for 2 days, and then I'm just looking for the next. So I stopped counting whatever after that. I'm like, I don't even care anymore. But then you get into this community in a deeper way. Like, I was always, let's say, the best guy around because I was always pushing the hardest. All of a sudden, now we're all high level guys because you're a coach, you meet coaches, you go like and do crazy stuff, and it becomes like a game, like you're trying to push each other. I just realized I was becoming more distant from women. Like, I was becoming more distant from women and just seeing like this person as a process, or like
Mm.
a as a way for me to achieve something with this woman. It can be that blonde one or the brunette. Like, who she is doesn't matter, and that's crazy to me because, like you said too, we need to keep in mind. Like, I was actually even writing about this as I was realizing it in 2018 and 2019, especially 2019. I started to write about this in our old group. It's all gone now, but I actually started to write about the fact that, like, you can end up in this trap that I was in, because I was in a trap. I was dating a bunch of girls when I was in Poland, and like, I saw, like, I didn't care. Like, I had what I wanted, but I was like, no, it was not enough. Like, I saw how my mind was hooked onto something which I didn't like. Like, my original goal was to become free with women, but not to have a lot of women. Actually, my original goal was to have like a girlfriend or someone I'm dating, or maybe like I can date one, two, or three girls, whatever. But my goal was never to make my whole life about girls. And now my whole life had been about girls for so long. And there was this whole ego thing as well, because it's hilarious. Like, let's say a normal guy, if someone is just sleeping with a few hot girls, he's the coolest guy. But then it goes into stages. So, like, when everyone has a lay count over 100, now someone has 300. Wow, everyone has that of 300. Now someone has 1,000. Like, it becomes a sick game, in my opinion, with the peers, and then the whole community. I had thousands of people looking up to me. So it took a little bit of courage for me to just be like, I'm gonna be a celibate, like, I'm not going to sleep with any women for a long time and just give up this identity completely. Um, so as as I did that, there was a struggle initially, but I'm like, no, who cares? I'm just dropping it because I'm too sick of this. I had been thinking about it for all of 2019, but in 2019 I was still doing dating boot camps, so I couldn't drop it. Um, but in 2020 I stopped with the boot camp, so then I could drop that. Now here's very interesting what happened to me after. So I dropped it for 2 years. Um, I didn't think it was going to be that long, but it was 2 years. And then at the end of that, um, some aspect of that was healthy. Some aspect of it was like suppressing my own sexuality because I was doing NoFap as well for 11 months and 13 months consecutively, which made me suppress a lot of my sexuality as well. But I was becoming a very vulnerable part. I was becoming a very vulnerable Nils with women, which I hadn't been since I was a kid. So like when I actually started to meet women again, I was like insane levels of attachment. Even if I like just talk to a girl, I'll think about her all the time for weeks. Like the old stuff we used to have when we were kids, it was unresolved. It had never came up because I had just smoothen it out by learning how to get in state and learning how to get very good in the flow. But I never touched on these core traumas with women. So these shit was coming up now. And because I had the tools of inner work, I started to deal with that. So, and then I go to Colombia and then I sleep with the first girl in over 2 years. Yeah, so basically, like, I decided to become celibate and I was doing like NoFap at the same time. So for like 13 months and 11 months. So I was celibate for over 2 years. And basically, I didn't know that I was going to be celibate for that long. And to be honest, one aspect was suppressing as well my sexuality. But when I started meeting girls again, I was so vulnerable. I was like a little child. I was no longer the strong version who had like 6 years of momentum in the game. I was like a little child. And I experienced something that I never experienced since I was a teenager or even younger. Um, and every girl that I met, especially the girls in the beginning, like I would become obsessed, just like you are when you're a little kid. I could think about this girl all the time. I would see like I just approach a girl and I think about her for 2 weeks straight.
Mm,
Um, Finally, I have now the opportunity to work out those things because they were never worked out in the game. This is what people don't realize.
mm,
People that don't do this work, no matter how good they are with women, if they had traumas like we had when we were young, that is not fixed. And once they stop with the momentum, they stop the game, they're going to go back to that version. And that's what I was. I was back at that version, which was refreshing because I was at real ground zero. So I could start to deal with those traumas now. They were very, very in me. One thing is I never fall in love after I was a teenager. I never fell in love when I was in the game because my heart was one of steel. Like my heart was frozen. And all my friends knew this. They made fun of me for that. So first girl I sleep with after 2 years, I fall in love with her, of course. And this was when I was in Colombia, and like culture shock. We don't even speak the language. I'm learning Spanish to speak with her, and I fall in love like big time. And she's not about that for sure. Like she just want to have fun, and I'm falling in love with her, and circumstances kind of make it so that I can't see her. She gets sick, and then she goes with another guy after that. And I'm like heartbroken, and I had so much attachment to this woman. But it was the first time in my life since adult I fall in love, and I'm heartbroken for like 6 months. But I learned so much about myself. I learned all these things that I was blocking out. I learned like my real vulnerability was never really touched on so much. And I started to like go deep into these blockages and change myself in a bigger way and become like truly comfortable around women, not just able to ride the vibes with women, but actually to be truly comfortable with women and to be myself and to not pretend in any way anymore and not to avoid any pain I felt, because I felt that pain now finally, and I started to process it. So in a way, that was a gift, a huge gift for me, the heartbreak experience that I had.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like I've spoken about that. I've had that a lot before. More like before my kind of journey, where it was like those heartbreaks. And it was also similar to like my spirituality journey when that started. It was like I would always like break up with a girl, and then like oh, I wouldn't break up with her, she would break up with me because I was so like into her and kind of pushed her away. And like I remember the first time, or like one of the significant times that happened in my late teenagers, I can't remember, early 20s. Like I remember I'd just suppress it, you know. So like we'd be going out with friends and I was partying and stuff. And I remember that night I'd just get like hammered drunk, like, oh, I don't want to feel these feelings of loneliness or feeling like I've just been rejected or feeling that I've been abandoned. So like I suppress it with alcohol. Then like I don't know, a year later,
Mm,
6 months, 2 years later, meet another girl, exact same situation happens. At that time, now I'm not drinking anymore. I've said, okay, I'm focusing on my health. I don't drink, but I smoke weed, you know? So after that breakup
yeah.
happens, the first thought in my head is like, let's smoke a fat joint, you know, like to just get me out of here. I just want to run away. Exact same procedure. Third time this happened, 6 months, a year later, different girl. And at that time, I wasn't smoking weed, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing anything, being very healthy. And I remember the first thought that came into my head when this happens, like I just want to eat like a fat, greasy burger with French fries and all this type of stuff. And that was the first time in my life where I caught that little voice in my head, that little like I need to suppress this thing, and I say, hey, I recognize you now. Whether it was alcohol or smoking weed or bad food, it's the same mechanism. And that was the first time in my life I ever felt that heartbreak. Now, I don't know if it was to the extent that you done this, because this was still like before my journey. But I remember I just went and closed myself in my room that weekend and I said, I'm not running away from this feeling. I'm not running away from that sick feeling in my stomach that makes me like just want to fucking die, you know? And I actually sat there and I
Mm,
felt that, and I would speak to it and I'd say, I'm here for you now. Like I used to run away from you, but you're allowed to be inside of me now. And like that was a huge shift for me, like not just in my dating game, but also just like with myself. And I felt like I went to a new level when I stopped running away from those feelings and actually just kind of sat with them. So I'm sure I've still pretty good, got a lot of work to do, but it sounded like you had a more extreme, intense version of that. I'm kind of curious what came up for you, because obviously this is post your dating journey. So I don't know if there's still a little bit of an ego and like I'm good with girls and what would people think of me if they saw me now? Or were you at that stage where it was like, I don't care about any of this stuff. Like this experience is a gift, this heartbreak, this girl I fell in love with. And you were just able to do the work on that? Or would that like naughty little ego voice still kind of rear its head? How was that process for you?
yeah, like luckily because of my strong celibacy, like that ego was dead. That ego was
Mm.
nearly dead. Like about being good with women, I didn't care anymore. I allowed myself to be very bad with women if that was what I needed. Um, I even made a post about it actually, the whole thing, and put it on my Facebook, which got a lot of I got a lot of love, and a lot of people liked me for the vulnerability. Um, yeah, I felt stupid because I fall in love with a girl so quick, of course, when she's not feeling the same, and I know she was not feeling the same. I remember like the moment where I told her that I loved her, I knew that she didn't, and I knew that she won't love me back, but I felt I had to get it off my chest because I hadn't felt like that since I was like, let's say 15, from that original experience that I expressed. I'd shut myself down. So luckily I was able to be fully vulnerable, but that made it very hard because all of that shit that I experienced with women, it was coming up, like all the pain that I had in my teenage years that motivated me to be so extreme in the dating community. It all came up, and like I was not functioning so well for quite some time. I had a very good friend beside me who was probably part of the reason why I experienced it so strong, because my friend was into dating. He was a dating coach at some point as well, but he was more spiritual and very focused on the heart. He was very heart open. So like being
Mm.
around him, my heart was very open, probably the most it's ever been. And letting a girl in like that and just getting crushed completely. I tried to allow myself to be as crushed as possible because I was so aware of this inner work. It was still a struggle. I would say like it took me 6 months to get over the first 80%. And then she kind of messaged me again when I was not in the continent, so I got back into it a little bit. But then I realized no, it's not a good idea. So then it took maybe 6 more months to finish it. Um, but yeah, like I didn't have so much at that point. I didn't care so much about the community because I saw how toxic it was to try to live up to a certain image and try to be
Mm.
cool. I saw how toxic it was. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that thing about the heart journey. One of my mentors at the moment, a guy named Umrapani, he's badass, and he almost like relates man woman relating to like the chakra system, you know. So like at the root level,
Mm,
like that's more about like how do you serve each other. Like a man needs to be able to be a protector, you know. You need to have access to the monster, so to speak, but not necessarily use it, and women find that like very attractive, you know. And then at the second center, that's more of your sex center, you know. Can you thrill a woman in her sex? And then like third center, that's more like ego, where it's like, hey, does she look up to you, you know, does she respect you? And obviously each of these levels can have their own traps, and these are all kind of like the animalistic lower levels, the base three. And then he talks about the time you have the biggest shift is when you actually move from those bottom three and you go into the fourth, which is obviously the heart. And he says that heart journeys are the most excruciating thing you ever do, because what they basically are is humiliation. It's you feeling something towards someone and you writing them fucking love poems, and you'll stand outside their house and sing to them and do all these things where you know that this might is probably not going to be reciprocated. Like this ends in you being crushed, and having the courage to actually go and do that is a spiritual journey and a spiritual quest. And I can honestly say, like, I actually haven't like really experienced that hard journey, but when he spoke about that, I was like, wow, that sounds so scary and vulnerable, and just like he says that's one of the best ways to fry up your ego is go on a hard journey, on a hard adventure. And it can be for men or women. But what you just described, it's almost like you had that experience where someone at a lower level might say, oh, what a loser. Look how he had one artist for this girl and he just got destroyed. But from like a deeper soul spiritual level, it's like you were able to unlock and deal with certain things that you wouldn't have been able to deal with had you not gone on that hard journey. So yeah, I think that's really interesting.
yeah, for sure. Like that's how I would explain it to some extent as well. Like just I was so deep in surrender. I knew this was my moment to experience something that I hadn't allowed myself to experience for over 13 years. So what I went through at that time, I knew I was going through something very special, something that I had been striving. Because all in social prime, when I became emotionally aware, I knew my heart was frozen, and I knew I couldn't get out of that, and I wanted to get out of that, and I wanted to feel love.
Mm.
Um, so that was the first time that I managed to do that. So I basically had to starve my dating ego, my pickup ego, for 2 years. So kill it basically by not engaging in dating at all, and sort of have all my walls come down and go and be extremely vulnerable with a girl who breaks my heart, while feeling so stupid that I fall in love with a girl so fast. I set the right conditions for that. And then I really went through that, and I saw it as an experience, and I try to go as deep as possible. Probably I can get broken even deeper, I guess, but that was the deepest experience that I had with my own heart, in terms of feeling the most love I felt, and also what happened after. So I see it. It was such a gift, the whole thing, because it changed everything, and it made me feel into a layer which I never could touch in dating.
Mm.
Something that changed me like very on a deep, deep, deep level.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think dating does relate with, like, as I was saying, like the lower three chakras, like, oh, be dominant, or like be the prize, or like learn how to turn her on. But it never goes above that, it never goes below those bottom three. And like, in order to transcend it, obviously you've had an experience with that sounds pretty powerful, man. Yeah, I'm almost jealous. I'm like, wow, that sounds wild. And I'm sure it was brutal and excruciating, and not a good thing, or like a good feeling thing necessarily, but it seemed like it was able to burn down things that you would never be able to touch had you not gone on it. And where does that kind of leave you now? Because obviously you're not in South America, you're back in Europe. Like, what's going on for Nils at the moment? And do you have a bit of a plan where you see things going in the future, or is it just kind of taking it day by day?
Yeah, so like where I am with women right now, obviously I'm very deeply spiritually involved. I do a lot of spiritual practice every day for many years now. That takes some of my time and focus. Um, but I am like exploring, and meeting women. Still, I have come back to it because I have healed from the heartbreak, and what I see is like my ability to connect with women is much stronger than before. I'm able to be more genuine. um, I'm still traveling like a nomad, so I'm not really forming, at least right now, like relationship kind of bonds. It's more like casual, at least when I'm in Budapest. But then I actually last year I was living in a village again in Portugal. So then I didn't. I met a little bit of women, but I was more focused on regaining my breakdance career and working. So it has to do with different focuses. Also now in about 3 months' time, I'm going to India for a 8 day long silence program called Samyama. So that my focus is on that as well at this moment, which is refreshing because I see I don't have an obsession with focusing on women right now. I can take
Mm,
it in stages. When I feel like talking to women, as I do when I'm here, I do that. But in the summer, I was in the summer house in an island, way 2 hours from Stockholm. There's no women, and I'm not bothered. I'm okay, I'm not how I used to be, or how many people in the dating community are, that they are addicted to always talk to women. Like, I can not talk to women for months, go and allow myself to be awkward as shit for 1 2 weeks, and then I'm good,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's really cool to the place that you found yourself in, and obviously you got a lot of focuses. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where you go over the next couple of years with woman. Obviously you're doing a lot of other cool things. For me, it was really interesting because, like, one of the ways that I've looked to kill the dating ego, although I'm sure it's probably still there, is like committing to one woman. Like, that was like anti my ego. How can I feel the ego if I've only committed to one woman? Because there's like a depth in that where you're like, I can't just go out and like get another girl. It's like I'm committing to this, and I had so many surface level relationships with so many girls, where now it's like it's forcing me to go into the depth. And what that's bringing up is pretty interesting. So yeah, I'd be keen to see your journey unfold. And if you ever do, like, obviously that's not a choice for everyone, but like, I see myself like also like starting a family and doing all of that as well. So yeah, I don't know if you also have that down the pipeline for you, but it'll be interesting because I think that also brings up other things that it's hard to work on with just surface level relationships as well. So we'll see what happens with that. Yeah.
Very much, like very much. It's interesting because when I go to India now and I go much deeper into spirituality even than I am, I will ask myself this question in a very deep way, like, do I want to get into a committed relationship? Do I see myself starting a family? Because if I do that, it needs to be a conscious choice. And if I don't do that, it needs to be a conscious choice because there's a wins and losses on both sides.
I definitely see myself leaning more towards being in the world, not being like a permanent monk kind of person,
Mm,
but no, being in
mm,
the world, having a committed relationship, and having a partner which is aligned enough and wants to grow. Because at least for me, the way I see my own growth is that I don't stagnate. I keep going. I keep going
mm,
deeper into these things, into my own work, into working with people and working on myself. This is like the
mm,
highest value for me.
mm,
So obviously, I need to have a girl who is at least interested in that. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. But I see that as the next level for me when it comes to women. The only way that won't happen is if I decide to become like a pure monk, which
mm.
I don't know, but I cannot say 100%
Yeah.
if it's out of the ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. It'll be interesting to hear your experience in India and what unfolds from there. Cool, Nils. Let's wrap it up there. There were some juicy topics that we got into. Really appreciate you coming on the Magnetic Man today. I will obviously drop the links below where you can find Nils on his social media if you want to reach out. He's obviously shown his depth in terms of the journey he's been on. And if you want to get into those deeper parts of yourself, definitely check him out. Check out his coaching out because he obviously walks his talk and he's done the work to be able to help you get there. So, Nils, any final word from you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. So one thing about the coaching that I do,
Mm-hmm.
in the last 3 years, 3.5 years, it's been very focused on the mindset and the life coaching aspect. So what I do is I work on people's blockages, not exclusive to women, but also including women if it's relevant. Whatever the biggest problem that you have, and through that I identify the blockages you have from achieving that, and I help you to deal with that while becoming a better version and more authentic version of yourself. That's the work I do. At the moment, I work through like 3 month long programs, and I'm taking students at the moment. And the main way to connect with me is on Facebook. So, like every podcast I do like this, there's always people coming and connecting to me through Facebook, and that's where I have my main business. So, if that's something that you feel is something you want to do that feels right for your life right now, you want to take your life to the next level, and you resonate with me, of course, then don't hesitate to reach out and we can get connected.
Awesome. Definitely, guys, go check out Nils on Facebook. We'll put his Facebook link below wherever you're listening to this podcast and go check him out and check his work out. Highly recommended. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in today, everyone. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye bye for now.
Bye. Ciao.